Good morning and welcome to the morning show. I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. I have Joe Tolle from ATV On Demand and professional racer Cody Collier. We here at ATV Talk will bring you 3 shows a week. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the live show on what was that, Joe? The live show on YouTube. 2 is your audio show on Tuesday, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And our third show is a live Instagram show Wednesdays at 6 o'clock called Bench Prep Conversations. We need to thank Elka Suspension for all the support that they give the ATV industry and ATV Talk. Also, Antelope Slot Canyon Tours. These guys are awesome. If you're on vacation in Arizona during their open season, please go book a tour and go check out the canyons. You will never see anything like it anywhere in the world. Craig Christie and the Blunt family. These are 2 individuals that have helped us out a lot and make sure that we get around the country to see different things. So a special thanks to them and all they do for this sport. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Great. How are we doing, Leonard? How are we doing, Joe?
I'm good. How are you, Cody? Well, you already said you're doing great.
Right.
Me too. Me too. No, all's good. All's good. All's good. No, excited to be here. Excited to get, talk about racing. Nowhere else I'd rather be.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, Cody, why don't you turn your volume up just a hair for me, please?
Oh, let's see what I can do for you guys. Is that any better? I just need to speak up some.
Either way.
I
All
hear,
right.
I,
All right.
I hear you well, Cody. You sound plenty loud to me.
Good.
I'll try to speak up for you guys.
Perfect. What I wanted to talk about today is, Cody, you've been a long time XC racer. Joe, you've followed it off and on most of your career. What is the big draw for the spectators in cross-country racing? At Ironman, the final round, there were almost 75,000 people there.
That's insane.
It is insane. And I know some of them are racers and participants, but you have a huge draw of spectators coming out. Cody, you've been racing out there for what, almost 20 years now?
Oh yeah. No, I think this is my 18th year running the national series, but yeah, over 20 years now racing.
What do you think the overwhelming draw for the spectators coming out to XC races are?
I mean, there's a lot of great things. What's not to love? What's not to love? No, we me and Joe talk on and off, and we've already talked about it a little bit. But for me, my big thing is just how easy it is to come racing. You got your motocross, your Bajas, and everything like that. It's a commitment to come and race those. Like you're gone for 2 or 3 days from your home racing that event, so you got to pack and provide and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does take a little bit more out of you to go do that. Whereas cross country, whether it's just you or just your kid or you and your kid, you're there for one day, more or less, more often than not, you're there for one day. So you can leave Saturday morning, go watch your kid race, go home. If you're in the afternoon, you could sleep in a little bit. If you're prepped, go race, go home. You're not there for several motos throughout the day. It's just it's a hit and go. The Nationals, a lot of people come out Friday just to hang out because the atmosphere is so fantastic at the Nationals. So a lot of people come Friday just to hang out with everybody. And then you race Saturday. A lot of people will stay Saturday evening as well just to enjoy it one more time. And they got all day to drive home Sunday for the national event style. So there's a couple different styles across country, but it's pretty accessible to the average man.
That's a good take. Joe, what's your view on it?
I think if you're looking at it from the racer perspective, if you want to go get involved in ATV motocross as a participant, which I think we're talking almost more spectator than participant, but if we're talking participant, you need a relatively modern 450 to compete in motocross. You need a bunch of work done to it. It's a little bit like less approachable. When you go out to a GNCC, you'll see, if you just go to watch, you're going to see somebody, if you have some kind of old sport quad, there's guys that race 400EX and Z400s. A guy won 4x4B at I think Hoosier 4x4B or some vet class. I don't remember. I spoke to him. He was racing an old Rincon, a 10-year-old Honda Rincon, and he won his class and he had a great time. So it's a way more approachable sport. Yeah, you can race it up to the pro level, but if you've got just a good running stock machine with some skid plates and a kill switch, you can go out and get your feet wet, literally, and have a good time. And I think from the spectator perspective of it, you know, in two-wheel or four-wheel motocross, all the bikes just kind of look the same. They're all shaped the same. They're different colors, but ATV, especially the ATVs at GNCC, you get such a diversity of machines. You've got kids on sport quads. You've got all the 450s. You've got people on 20-year-old sport quads in lower classes. You got the top guys on 450s, and then you got the top guys in 4x4 like Cody, who, watching those guys go through the woods itself is just, it's pretty exciting to watch. And in GNCC as a spectator, you get the chance to get up close to it. 75,000 people. I mean, you're talking about, and obviously those were racers and spectators, but I mean, that's like a big Supercross crowd, and they're out there in the woods, but you can get up close to the racing. Try to be safe about it, please. But if you're like, hey, I want to watch this muddy hill, I think that'll be fun to watch. You could hang out if you know where this mud pit is. Hey, there's this really treacherous mud pit. We should go watch the guys get stuck and maybe help pull them out. I don't know. I think there's just a chance to get closer to it, and it's a show, and lots of different machines.
Yeah. I think the draw is the fact that you can run almost anything you want. You have an ATV or a motorcycle, you can show up and there's a class for you to race. It's a 1-day thing, 2-hour event. You go out there, do your thing. Joe, you and I have talked, some of the guys go out there and they'll, go a lap and then they'll stop and rest a minute and then go another lap and ride at their leisure and have the experience of the whole event. They can walk up and talk to the pros. They interact with everyone. So it's a much more laid back environment than some of your professional motocross or some of your other events that you see in the industry. Isn't that an easy way to call it, Cody? You guys are all accessible to all the people there?
Yeah. I try to be, like for myself, I try to be at least, try to talk to everybody. Yeah, no, I try not to forget where I came from. I remember being starting out in blue jeans and rubber boots, riding around and not knowing a thing in the sport. And I just try to always help people, tell other people things I wish somebody would have told me to get started, how to enjoy it. And but yeah, building off of what Joe was saying as well. As far as like getting people started in the sport, it is great that anybody can start at any level. So like me, when I started, I was in blue jeans and rubber boots. So I've been in a C class, a bottom tier class, but would race against competition that I enjoy and everything, that people at my riding level. And so like, your parents, your cousins, your friends and family come and watch, they come to watch you. But I think they keep coming back because the pros are so exciting to watch. There's so much drama and high level racing going on. It's really exciting. You come for your family, but the pros keep it so exciting to watch.
Do you think the overall cost of XC racing to build machines is less than it is to go out and build motocross machines?
Absolutely. In my mind, you could do it on a budget. You don't need to build a 30, 40, $50,000 quad. You can keep it budget, get a set of suspension, stock motor, just stock pipe. It's pretty much all you need to come racing at a decent level and be comfortable is like for a sport quad is like a stabilizer and suspension, maybe some V-locks and tire run flat system, but you don't need to build your motor, especially starting out. Don't be one of those $200 riders with $20,000 quads. Ride a machine that you're comfortable with, something that you can grow with and build with.
I love that. I love that. That was great, Cody. Joe, do you see it a similar way?
Oh yeah, a lot. Again, it goes back to approachability. I've got that 400X that we've tinkered with, did just a little project on buying a 400EX and just setting it up to trail ride it, and really it was a trail build. It was like stabilizer, skid plates. We put beadlock wheels on it because you don't want to get, 20 miles out in the woods and get a flat and you can't get back to camp. because you lost bead. So, we put bead locks on it, and, and there it is. It's a trail bike, but we also put a set of flex bars on it, and we put a stem on it because the stock stem was bent. But that wasn't the stem wasn't a necessity. Flex bars for a lot of people, especially if you have stock suspension, yeah. But bottom line is, there's not much done to that bike. We could take it and just throw a set of Elka Legacy Series shocks on it if we didn't want to be bougie at all. Just, throw a set of Elkas on the front, get the back shock revalved, or just throw a full set of Elka Legacy Series on it. They're not that expensive. And a kill switch, and get rid of the skid plate, put a rotor guard on it, and it's a cross-country bike. And it's like, yeah, will a pipe help you a little bit? Sure. But, if you're out there doing your first couple cross-country races, it's like me and Cody were talking earlier, keep your bike quiet if you're getting your teeth, if you're cutting your teeth in cross-country, because the scariest part of it, I think, for somebody getting started is there are going to be people that are way faster than you that are probably going to lap you. And it's beneficial to you and them to get out of their way. That's just a common courtesy. So you don't have to touch that motor to get started. Just make the bike handle, make it, prep it good so it survives. You can race almost stock. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. And, it's an endurance race. So if you go out and you're racing motocross, which is a sprint, you've got to have a 450 to some degree, because it's all out. Or cross country, it's a 2-hour, endurance race. You have to pace yourself. You can't go 100% for 2 hours. And, with that being said, you don't need as much of a bike, especially because you're not going to be racing pros. You're going to be racing the guys in your class. So
I think Bryson Neal would argue with that point.
There's a few anomalies out there. There's a few anomalies out there.
Didn't mean to throw you off, Joe.
Well, if you're in the pro class, you need a pro bike. If you're in the whatever C class, plus 40 C, whatever class there is that would be, for your age, and if you're a beginner, you don't need a Bryson Neal bike. You just need a bike that'll survive and will help you survive. And I think one good point, Cody would probably agree to it, is like a lot of times in GNCC, depending upon where you're at, less is more, especially in the motor department. Because if you're taking breaks because you built a monster motor, you're not going to cover as much ground as if you just rode 2 hours straight. So what if you're 4 seconds, 5 seconds slower a lap? You do 4 laps. You take a minute break because you got arm pump, you'd have been better off on the slower bike staying solid for 2 hours.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Right on. And one thing that to recap on what you said about, the faster riders, these slower riders need to hold your line. These faster riders will go around you. If you try to move out of their way, you could actually cause them to run into you or cause an issue. You just hold your ground, they will go by. They understand how to pass, and they understand that you're slower. So don't worry about that.
So Cody, help me out in case I decide to go out there and taste bark next year at a GNCC. If I'm the last guy, which it probably will be, if I'm the last guy in the morning race and you're coming up behind me, should I be diving for the sticks, or should I just stay in the middle of the trail? What is the proper GNCC etiquette for slow guys?
We never want you guys to tree yourself, right? We don't want you to panic and see us and just put yourself in the first tree that you see. We want you to find a good split option, a 2 or 3 quad wide section of the trail, pull off to one side. If there's a split line, just take one. We would, the pro riders would appreciate if you took the slower of the 2 option lines, because we're in the race. Because a lot of the times, they'll take the faster line and we'll go to swing wide. And the guy that we're battling with, just because the way that the lines pan out, they'll run that faster line and just shove you through it, and we'll lose the position. So, just be courteous. Just when you hear us coming, we've been in a while. We know to be patient with it. We don't want to get anyone hurt. We'll have as much respect for you as you have for us. How about that? So we might end up giving you a love tap here and there if there's been several option lines to pull over that you haven't too. So maybe if you get a love tap, that's just, hey, there's a few things that you've missed and you're holding me up past what you should have been. But No, it's just find your spot to get over. Don't trade yourself. Don't put yourself in a spot that you have to get off your quad to move your quad around. That's not what we want. Just be courteous, find your spot, and let us go. You ever driven on the freeway and your exit's coming up? It's kind of a longer exit lane, and you're behind somebody in traffic that's maybe doing the speed limit, and the exit happens, and you turn as soon as that white line comes over for the exit lane, and they make it 50 feet down the exit lane and then cut over into your front end. Don't be that guy. Get over as soon as the line opens. If you hear us on the gas, we're not running into the back of you. We're in the exit lane going around you. Don't panic and hop over into the exit lane.
Good call. Good call. I want to shift gears here a little bit and ask some other questions about, well, we don't really shift gears in a traditional sense on these machines, but I want to ask, your view on the allure to the 4x4 craze. I see more and more people buying 4x4 machines, from the sporty sport models that are high dollar to the lower dollar machines that you're using on the farm, or people are just entering into the industry, so they're buying a 450 4x4 machine and breaking themselves in on it. Why do you think people are starting to transition more to these machines, Cody?
It's 4x4 has always been kind of an afterthought in the sport. I grew up in it, and it was cool to watch the 4x4s, but it was never like I'm going to end up racing those one day. That's not where I want to end up. That was never really the thought for me growing up. Never was. The fact that I'm racing one today is if you told a 14, 15-year-old, 10-year-old Cody that he's racing 4x4s now professionally, he'd I think he'd laugh at you a little bit. It just wasn't a cool thing to do. It just wasn't a destination. And guys like Kevin Cunningham, Brian Buchanan, Landon Wolf, myself, and Frazier, we're showing these things off. We're really showing that these things are raceable at a high level, and it's I've had several people tell me, it defies physics the way you ride those things. We're making it a destination. It's showing off what these machines can do and putting them through the tests.
So, how many people? I see the class results, and I see that they're growing. Okay, especially in the pro class. How many people come up to you at an event and ask questions about your race machine, or how they can, possibly get on one?
A lot more and a lot more, dude. Like, it's the culture. I guess what I'm trying to say is the culture behind the what it means to race a 4x4 is growing. It's starting to be cool to race a 4x4. No, I have lots of people. I have probably 2 or 3 different people a week messaging me or talking to me on Instagram or whatever, and just asking questions, seeing what it takes to get involved. I'm sending my boy Mike at KMK all sorts of new people, and he's getting them set up with the 4x4. And I think it was also, kind of a lack of knowledge with it, because everybody's mindset was, oh wow, you can't keep these things running. They're big and bulky, all this, that, and the other. And we've developed different people have developed different programs that are proven and show that you can make them work for cross country.
Joe, you are one of the leaders, or the leader, in the video industry for ATVs, as far as producing content that showcases 4x4s and sport quads. As you get into the 4x4 deal and you showcase these models, what is the feedback you're getting from the consumer about these machines?
Wow. Wow. I've never even thought about, like, what is the specific feedback? I can tell you this, and maybe this is part of it, and it is based on feedback, and it's kind of like re-answering what Cody did, but it is partly based on feedback. I think more people are going to the 4x4s because that's what there is. Part of it. That's just number one. Number one, it's like we used to have a ton of sport quads, and now we don't. So, if you're an ATV guy, you're an ATV guy. Now, that doesn't mean you can't like side-by-sides, but if you're an ATV guy, an ATV provides a thrill that a side-by-side can't reproduce, because you are 50% of the machine on an ATV. So I hear a lot of people obviously groaning that there's not enough sport ATVs. I'm with them. But that being said, I do see a lot of people, they want the biggest, they want the fastest, they want the latest. And that's where you see development is in 4x4 ATV, more so than sport ATV, because obviously patent drawings from Yamaha are coming out. Polaris did some crazy stuff with that Scrambler S, which I have been told is not discontinued, even though they don't have 25s out. Nobody says what's coming, but they say they're not discontinued. I think it's partly that what a 4x4 ATV has really evolved. Back before Cody was born, when Mike Penland was racing a 4x4 ATV, it's like, holy crap, this guy wants to beat himself to death. If you go back and read the magazines in the late 80s and the early 90s, and the presumption and is how it was. Like, if you wanted a plush bike, you rode a sport quad. 4x4s, they'll rattle your fillings out. They weren't plush. They didn't, nap. But now it's flipped. It's kind of flipped the other direction, especially in that rooty, rocky, log crossing stuff, the stuff you find in the woods, more or less. Like, a sport ATV is now what's more harsh. These 4x4s, these aren't your daddy's Rancher that has 6.5 inches of travel at both ends. This latest Can-Am that you rode and now Cody's ridden, the thing's got 10.8 inches of travel up front, 12 inches in the rear, and it's got 12 inches of ground clearance and power steering. Like, these big, heavy bikes feel very light. They have way more suspension travel. They're plusher. They have independent rear suspension. So I think it's partly lack of sport quads in the market, but it's also partly the fact that 4x4s over the past 20, 25 years have just become so much more appealing from the rider perspective.
I kind of agree with that. Cody, let's get into the racing side of it a little bit more. You and I had a brief conversation about this, but in the sport quad side, they have a multitude of different classes for the four-wheel drives. I don't see a secondary class like a Pro-Am class or an XC2 class for the 4x4s. Wouldn't it be advantageous for you pro guys to go to the promoter and say, hey, start an XC2 class for the pro 4x4s and make it like a 700cc limit or something like that?
I think that'd be neat. I think it'd be kind of a catch-all for the people stepping up. Like you see with the XC2 class right now. It's let me restart. I think we need more depth in the 4x4 field. Like we're talking about, it's growing. I think we need a little bit more depth. Like the A class right now is a good XC2 class. I know we talked about having like a different motor size with it to kind of make it its own thing, its own entity with a smaller bore size or something. But I think the A class is an acting XC2 class for now, just with the amount of depth we have with the 4x4 fields. So I think here in 5-10 years, when it's really grown and you have a lot more 4x4 guys, I think that's definitely something we're going to have to look forward to. But I just don't know if we have that depth right now.
Well, you have CF Moto, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, Honda, Can-Am. All of these guys have these 4x4s in that range of engine size. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. And wouldn't it be advantageous to do something to bring all of those guys into the class? Maybe even limit the size of the XC1 or the Pro class and put you guys out there with some of these factories and develop the 4x4 class as more of a desired Pro class than with factory backing?
Most of those manufacturers you listed also will have 1,000 models. If they cared, they would, I think.
Okay.
If they cared, they would already. Because I don't. Why would I develop the Honda 400 when the Honda 450 is right there? Kind of
I get
thing.
it.
For me at least. Being a racer's racer, that's my point of view. But I'm sure Joe has something great to add to that.
Yeah, I want to hear your side of it.
If you look at Renegade is a sport version of a sport utility machine. Essentially the difference. Things have changed now with Gen 3 and Can-Am, but let's just go historically between Can-Am and Polaris. The Renegade and the Scrambler, the sport 4x4 machines from their respective brands, are heavily based on their sport utility of the equivalent displacement. You got Sportsman 1000, well, let's just stick with Can-Am. You had Renegade 1000 or Outlander 1000, you had Renegade 1000. Engines were basically the same, chassis the same. Shock tune was different, a little different shock package. Obviously, the Renegade has the low profile plastic where the Outlander's not. So, but they're very similar DNA. I think that, we do see Yamaha coming with something. We think they're coming with a twin that looks like a sport up build. Dirt Track's TV just finished up. They haven't put it out yet, but they just did a WR 700 build where they threw a whole bunch of aftermarket at a Grizzly 700 and turned it into like a CVT Raptor with four-wheel drive, more or less. I mean, the thing is sick. And it's a perfect example of what could be done for that 4x4 class. Now, they tried a 4x4 lights in the past. The problem was it was just a one dog show again. If you go to Cody's class, everybody's on Renegades. Maybe there's a guy on an Outlander I don't know about. Maybe occasionally Austin Parks will show up on an old Scrambler 1000. But for the most part, it's the Renegade show. I think what you're saying, like there is no sport 4x4 in a smaller displacement configuration other than the Renegade 650 or the Polaris Scrambler 850. I think if you wanted to do what you're talking about, Lenny, it's not so much a limit the displacement class, it's a limit the cylinder class. If you did a smaller displacement, say you had a 750 limit, and that was your deciding factor, that would be the Renegade 650 class. If you had an 850 limit, it would be the Scrambler and Renegade class. If you really want depth in manufacturers that can really potentially win a class, then I think you need to limit it to a single cylinder class, because then you've got Grizzly 700, King Quad 750, CF Moto 600, Sportsman 570, Honda Rubicon 680, which was the Rincon. I know I'm forgetting a couple, but you've got 6-7 bikes that could between 570 and 750 cc's that could play in that space. And CF Moto is not afraid to race. Obviously, right now, all they have are 2-seater long wheelbase models. That's not going to work in the woods, I don't think. But they do have a 600, single seater that could potentially play in a single cylinder class. So, could they fill it enough to make it worth their time? I don't know, but at least you'd have multiple brands that could sponsor riders.
So let me put it to you, Cody. You're in the professional racing ranks. If they did this and made a single cylinder class and brought these manufacturers in, how many more people do you think would transfer over to that? And because now you're going to have some factory backing, well, at least we hope you'd have factory backing. Would that be a draw or something that you would be interested in? So, to further your racing career and actually make it so that you could make a living doing it?
Potentially. I don't know. For me personally, I want to race the premier class. I don't want to race the XC2 class. Just where I'm at in my career and everything. I think a lot of your, guys that aren't fighting for the podium race in, race out, that is going to be very, very, very drawing for them to help develop a brand. And hopefully that would help them develop a bike for the pro class. That's kind of where I would be sitting on it.
Maybe I misspoke, making that the premier class, because we're trying to draw those manufacturers in to get more exposure. The manufacturers aren't going to promote the pro class that you're riding in if they don't have a machine in it. But if they made that the premier class, they're going to promote that.
Well, Lenny, I'm not trying to cut Cody off, but I've thought about the possibility of like, why haven't they done this? And I don't know that you make it the premier class. I mean, that could almost happen organically if there was enough interest and enough opportunity in it. But look at Supercross, and I don't know much about how they're racing dirt bike classes on Sunday, but I'm guessing that they have a pro class for 450 dirt bikes and they have a pro class for 250 dirt bikes, just like they do in outdoor Supercross, motocross. So why not have pro 4x4 and pro 4x4 light and let pro 4x4 light just be a single cylinder class?
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, you know, the 450s premier. You know, nobody wants to race 250 for their entire career. You'll see a lot of people that are at the end of their career in the 450 class drop back to the 250 class. I think it's going to be kind of exactly what we're seeing with the pro motocross and supercross.
I kind of agree. You know, they would have to almost eliminate the 1000 cc's and bring those guys in and make that the only class, you know, and almost limit everybody if it was going to work. But, you know, it's probably never going to happen, but it'd be great to get the factories involved and really make it, you know, backed by, you know, I know Yamaha's still promoting in the XC1 class when they're the only guy.
They do a lot of support. Big shout out to Yamaha for the amount of support that they do give the riders, and they have a monopoly on the field at the end of the day. They're the only ones producing and supporting, and they give out pretty much what, from my understanding, what the riders deserve. So big shout out to Yamaha on that.
Yeah, you got to thank them because they're keeping the sport quad in the limelight and doing a great job of it. You know, and it seems to me like they're also wanting to be involved in the 4x4 class. Maybe their machine's not going to be what they think it is. Maybe they're just, you know, sticking their toe in the water to see how it works. Who knows? If Yamaha came in there at full force and wanted to take over, I'll bet money they could.
You know, Yamaha, they're definitely building something. Like, is it going to come to market? We don't know, but they definitely, I would bet money that the product testing guys at Yamaha are riding their vehicle. I bet you it's not just drawings and patents. I bet you that the product testing guys have prototypes and they're actually riding them. You know, because they keep making changes. Again, is it going to come to market? But Yamaha could take that segment, totally just take it, because, you know, if you look at what they're doing in 4x4 right now, like their Grizzly, that's, my gosh, what is that thing, 20 years old? Now they've made it wider, they've tweaked it, they keep just slightly refining the edge, but, you know, it's a 700-pound 4x4 that feels like a 500-pound 4x4. Whereas if you ride a Can-Am or a Polaris, they are 800-900-pound machines that they steer light because they have power steering. But if you try to muscle the bike, they feel like an 800-900-pound machine. You know, Yamaha's mass centralization is so freaking dialed on that Grizzly. If they bring that same approach to building a sport 4x4 and they can just bring their insane mass centralization to play, and they go ground up as a sport 4x4, whereas everything we've seen in 4x4 has been, let's build a utility machine and then let's turn it into a sport machine. If Yamaha comes at this from a ground up concept of let's build the most badass sport 4x4 machine that we can without consideration for racks or towing and things like that, they'll probably kill it.
Well, okay,
there's no compromise.
Right. I'm kind of new to this, so you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I got to meet the guys at Can-Am. I know of the guys at Yamaha and I understand their skill set. And I believe that having professional guys like Yamaha does, I think this is what Can-Am's trying to do. They're trying to bring professionals in to that group to build these machines to make them at a higher level. What nobody's talking about is over here in the dark. Square One Speed just brought this up. The dark horse is CF Moto. They're doing all this behind the scenes work They had an entry in the last deal, Dakar, that's no longer going to allow ATVs. So they're developing machines. They're working towards this. And if they get racers or professionals in there that know how to build, they will become a competitor in this sport 4x4 industry.
Yes. My thing on it is, I think everybody likes change, right? You know, people don't like change, but everybody likes change. In the 4x4 field right now, like we've been saying, it's the Renegade show. You put myself or Fraser or whatever flavor of 4x4 Pro you want on your machine, and just get it out there and show it can perform, it can compete. I think people will switch just to switch. I think people are sick of the Renegade. So you put that product out there on a rider you believe in, you're going to get change. There is a big market. The sport is growing. There's a big market for it, and if you just put your machine on display, it's going to get sales.
I think that you remember the old school, Joe, you probably remember this. Win on Sunday, buy on Monday. You remember that old deal? I believe that that is true in the 4x4 world. People are watching these Can-Ams go out and win races, and then they're going out and buying it.
Yeah, and there's another manufacturer's got to step up and do the same thing. You know, pick a rider you believe in, develop with them, and you'll see that. It might not be, if if I got on a quad, at round one and I won, nobody's going to be on that quad at round two. But I think by 26, 27, I think you're going to really start seeing a shift.
I disagree with that, Cody. I was there when the TRX 450R came out, the first one, and we rolled ours out to Works, and Doug Eichner wrote it. Within days, the phone was ringing off the hook for people buying the 450s and rolling them to the starting line. And at the next race, instead of one Honda, there's six.
Yeah.
And I think that you go out and win on a new machine the first round. By the second round, there'll be another one. By the fourth round, there'll be 4 or 5.
I agree with that. I'm just saying in masses, as far as investing into the sport and at least getting other manufacturers thinking about the possibilities.
Building.
I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I was just going to say, building, it's a little different. It's a little different because, when you're talking about rolling out that Honda was always the predominant brand. Honda, look at ATV racing. Like Honda dominated with the TRX 250R. Even when they went away and you had a Banshee you could go buy. Like we could always buy a, competition-based high-performance quad from Yamaha, but the Banshee just wasn't the quad for the job. So guys weren't racing them in big numbers. Honda carried us through the two-stroke days. Then they kind of lit the flame again a little bit with the 400EX. And, I think when Yamaha came out with the YFZ 450, and then 2 months later, here comes the 450R from Honda. I don't think that would be a hard switch for a lot of people because Honda was always the company. It's the one that was winning from the 3-wheelers to the 4-wheelers. It was a top brand. So I think that would be an easy switch for a lot of people. Now, I think Can-Am is so established. They have dominated that space. Like the 4x4 Pro class has probably been the Can-Am class since, the Renegade 800 came out. So that's been their class, and no one's ever taken it away. I think in building those machines is a little more complicated. I think Cody's first thing is the way I kind of see. Like it's going to take a little longer to get people to switch because just the complications of building a 4x4 machine. It's not just like take a 450R, build a pipe, put some A-arms on it, get a shock built for it. Like there's a lot more reinforcements that typically go into those bikes. They're a little more complicated. I think they take a little more time to develop. And I think that's why it probably take a little longer for people to switch.
Yeah, it's not as simple as buying off the showroom floor and it being competable and you're not destroying the thing like you would see with the Honda 450 back in the day. You need to know what you're getting yourself into and have the quad prep properly. You buy it off the showroom floor if you want to race it. at a high level in cross country, or there's some things you need to know about how to do on them?
Cody,
you have companies like, wait a second, Joe. You have companies like K&K, right? And DeRisi
Yes.
Racing. They specialize in this. And if their guy, whichever company it is, they're going to go out and develop this machine, and they're going to have a race package ready to go if they're doing it right, so that X3 number pro guy or 4 or 5 guy comes in and asks for that package, they're going to be able to turn it around immediately and put him out on the track, because that's their business. That's what they have to do to make money, to get their product out there. I mean, back in the day when we were building race machines all the time, and when going against Allen and Curtis and all the guys, you had to have your package ready and built to bolt on to go, and you couldn't wait. So I see that if these companies want to do this, they're going to have their package developed so that the second guy or the third guy is racing immediately and not waiting. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Joe.
No, it was just, here's a perfect example. And I think we're probably going a little further down this path than we need to. But when the YFZ 450 first debuted, John Pellin got one from Yamaha from the press event for Corey Ellis to race at an ATV National in 2 weeks. They had 2 weeks to build a bike. What did they have to do to make that happen? They took it to Lone Star. Lone Star built a set of A-arms for it, an axle. Wayne built some shocks for it. Most of the other parts you needed for that bike to go, GYTR, Yamaha already had a pipe. I don't know if that's what Corey ended up running on that bike or not. I don't have the full specs, but there was only so much you had to do to that bike to uncork it. It had an FCR carburetor. It was competitively fast with a lot of the hybrids at the time. So there just was only so much to do. Building a 4x4 ATV, building a sport quad is closer to building a dirt bike. Whereas I look at like building a 4x4 ATV is almost like building a side-by-side as far as complexity. It's a lot, and don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting 4x4 ATVs and saying they're side-by-side guys. Nothing against the side-by-side guys, but a 4x4 ATV is a lot more complicated. It's a lot more moving parts. There's a whole lot more to take into consideration. The sport quad's a lot more simple. Facts.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree to not disagree at the same time.
Let's ask Cody. He's raced both.
I think they're both high tech, and I think they both take a lot of work and development to build. So they both got to go to the frame. You're still gusseting. You're still preparing things. Basically the same world, Cody, or am I off base?
It's in the middle. There's truth to both sides. It's a lot of the same prep going on. But if you don't do it on the 4x4, the consequences are astronomical. Like on a YFZ 450, I raced this bone stock one at locals all day long and win overalls, or at least competing for the overall on a bone stock YFZ 450R off the showroom floor. Stock tires and wheels. If I'm lucky, I got tires and wheels on it. Pretty much all it's got is a snap bar delete where I'd over wheelie it and snap the grab bar off. That's pretty much all I got at locals. Whereas if I'm on a 4x4, I have to do a certain amount of things to it to even have it where I even want to ride it at a race pace. And, that's speaking for me personally as a pro racer. I know if you're a ABC guy vet rider, there's a lot of different things that go into that. But the being able to take it off the showroom floor is a little bit tougher, I think, on the 4x4 end. Just a little bit at a high level.
I don't disagree with that. At the pro level, all of them need a lot of work. The Square One in the chat again is talking about the Scrambler 1000 coming out and racing best in the desert and works. I think that's a show that there's a growing number of people wanting to ride. They can't get the sport quad, so they're going to the 4x4s that are the more sportier models and racing them. Maybe we could get one of Cody's bikes out here on the West Coast. and get him invest in the desert or get him into some works races. All he's got to do is ship it to me. I'll prep it and work with him and take care of him if he needs.
You know what? I don't think you're not going to see Renegades on the West Coast like that Scrambler. The Renegade just doesn't work in that environment. Cody, you can smack me around, tell me I'm full of shit. Please cut me off anytime you want. But, that bike works in the woods. The Scrambler does not. It's too big. It's too wide. Whereas I've watched the Icebreaker at the Badlands, and cross-country races at Badlands in Attica, Indiana, and that place is very whooped out. It's very sandy. And, you watch guys on Renegades that would normally be killing it in the roots and the rocks in the ruts, and they're just going over these whoops, and they look like they're riding a sea-doo through waves, and they're just rolling over the waves. Sport quad guys, they're trying to pound them, and they're still kind of suffering. A Scrambler S, you could stand up and mob through that shit. It has so much wheelbase, it has so much travel. It's just like it begs for the desert. We filmed a Raptor Scrambler Renegade shootout here a few months ago, and the tight sections of the woods where we ran them, the Scrambler just wasn't going to make it through like the Renegade and the Raptor. Watch that video if you want to see which one of those two went faster. We did do a field test. I'll tell you this, if it was a whooped out field test in that fast corner to corner long straightaway, we're full of 2 foot deep whoops, I think it would have easily went the fastest of the 3 bikes. The Scrambler's a desert bike.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I'm 100% in agreement with Joe here. It's hard to compete with 55 inches of width with the extra 2-3 inches of suspension travel at least. It's hard to compete with that going from cross country to woods. So it's comparing apples to oranges. I think they're built for 2 different things. You can make it work for both. I have arguably the nicest setup 4x4 in the world for cross country racing, and it's if you take that out against a works built Scrambler, and I just my quad as is and took it out there, even with me riding it, I would be overriding it like crazy trying to compete on the same somebody riding just that Scrambler. And the same thing, if you brought that Scrambler out, that identical Scrambler out here to the East Coast, it's not fitting through the course. You're not making it through the track with the width and the suspension travel. So
breaking off A-arms.
yeah. I have heard that Polaris is in like just through the grapevines. I've heard that Polaris is developing an XC bike. They've been doing some things behind the works, I guess. So pretty cool. So that they go ahead.
We'll see Lenny. What they come out with. I do have a direct question for you, Cody, in the chat. They want to know if Yamaha built that ground up machine and did the development work to make it good, would that benefit your program in preparation to go race? So what that means is they've done their homework, which Yamaha generally does, so that they provide you with a chassis setup that you don't have to do as much work to. Would that benefit you?
I mean, absolutely. It's hard just to switch brands. I've got all this R&D and investment into the Can-Am, and we know everything about. We got a program that works. If Yamaha says tomorrow that they're coming out with the Yamaha, am I going to go out and buy one? No. Is the average spectator going to be, or the average racer going to be more likely to go out and buy that over the Can-Am? Potentially, but then again, I think it goes back to the somebody's got to go out there and prove it's worth something to go out and race it.
I believe if Yamaha is going to do that, they're going to go to one of you guys, handpick you, bring you into their fold, use you as a test rider to develop this machine, and then roll you to the starting line with a real program behind you that's developed and ready to rock and roll. If that, I don't see that happening, but it could be happening behind our backs and us not even know. I want to change the channel again on us. This is something that I enjoy because I was personally involved in it, and I want to get your take on it to find out, am I full of it and just excited about something that's not real, or is this machine for real? The Gen 3 from Can-Am, the Outlander that I got to ride, I thought was an amazing machine. I was expecting the old school 4x4, do, you know, big deal, right? This to me, this had acceleration, it had power, it went through the bumps well, it did a lot of things that I really enjoyed and made it fun for me to ride. You being a professional and getting to ride that machine out of the box, is it as good as I think, or is it still need work?
Um, but I'll go with the latter. I think it still needs. Let's reset. Me and Joe talk. Me and Joe's where we did get to ride it. Me and Joe have been talking about it a lot, trying to get the wording and the details right. Um, it's I said, me and Joe were talking about this earlier. I think it's like we got to ride the Outlander Gen 3 versus the Renegade Gen 2. So I said it was like comparing a Ford Explorer to a Ford Mustang. You know, one's built for luxury and all this, and the other one's a sport 4x4 ATV. And then Joe had a better, you know, I told him that, and he's like, you know, it's more like building the F-150 Platinum Edition, all the bells and whistles, the luxury pickup truck versus like the Ford Raptor, which is built for it. And at the end of the day, they're both pickup trucks. So I think that's a better analogy versus like a sport ATV and everything. But I'll let Joe take it from here and kind of give the in-depth about it.
All right, Joe, let's hear what you got to say, bud.
Yeah, and it was cool because we went up and I got a few side-by-side videos to get through, and then we'll jump back into some ATV stuff. So I'm kind of talking about a bunch of videos that we filmed that are kind of just sitting here waiting to come out. Sorry, I don't have time to commit to doing both sports at the same time. I wish I could clone myself. But yeah, it was interesting. We went out, we ran them both head to head, and I don't want to kind of give it all away, but I think, without kind of giving away like who won drag racing and this and that and the other, which like there's a niche little group of guys that have no talent and that's all they care about is, oh, does it go faster on a straight line? Well, you can wait till the video comes out to find that out. I don't know, Cody, why don't you just roll with it? Cody rode, and I thought him and Mike spoke very well in the interview that we filmed. So what did you think, Cody?
I got you. I appreciate it, Joe. Yeah, no. So like they're different. You know, the Outlander's a utility bike. It's meant for you to go down a trail. It's meant for you to enjoy riding it, not race it. That's what the Outlander is built for. That's its intent. It's not built for you to be able to stand up the front end if you give it full throttle. It's not built to hammer corners and dive into corners and try to get the suspension to flex like crazy from overriding it. It's meant for you to enjoy a trail ride. That's what it's meant for. It's got the sporty application. You can get on it in sections. It's super comfortable. It's just for me being a racer, it's not what I want. For not, I don't know, 90% of ATV consumers, 80% of them that just want to enjoy riding them, that's the bike you want over the Renegade.
Not to interrupt,
sorry,
Joe.
go ahead, Lenny. Go ahead.
One quick comment. Your perspective of that 1000 then for just a rider is, did they make all the advantages and all the upgrades that they say they do? Is that machine that much better?
Yeah, I don't want to give, we want you guys to still go and watch the video when it gets posted. Don't want to give too much away here. I don't want to get into too many of the specifics about what I liked and didn't like and things to look forward to if Can-Am comes out with the Gen 3 Renegade, the things I'm looking for it to see if they care about the sport side of it as well. But yeah, my dad we own a Gen 2 Outlander. I know pretty much exactly what a Gen 2 Outlander does. The Gen 3 Outlander did everything better across the board, I think, as far as trail riding. Even racing application, I think it's just an upgrade from the Gen 2 Outlander.
Now, Cody, I got a question because a few years ago, me and a couple of our test riders, we did Gen 2 Renegade versus Gen 2 Outlander. And we kind of felt, I assume you've got time on your dad's Outlander 1000 XTP. We kind of felt like this is the same bike. The suspension's a little softer on the Outlander. The engines were basically identical, like drag racing the two. was kind of similar. Renegade usually won because it was a little lighter, but if we could get more grip because the Outlander was heavier, the Outlander could beat it just because of traction, bigger tire, and on a loose start. But we felt like the basic handling characteristic very similar. The way it went through stuff very similar. Renegade obviously a little stiffer, a little more bottoming resistance, a little less body roll because of stiffer shock package. But we kind of felt like bike to bike, it kind of came down to if you wanted more mud protection and the ability to haul stuff, you bought the Outlander. If you didn't need to do all that and you wanted a little bit lighter, stiffer bike, you bought the Renegade. Is that kind of how you would take those two looking at them? Because I see Gen 3 Outlander and Renegade as very different machines. Did you think that Gen 2s were that similar?
I don't know if my dad's Gen 2 Outlander, if the shocks are blown out on or what, but it felt like every time, trying to dive into a corner, it felt like that front tire was touching that fender. And it was everything you could not to roll the thing. And that's me, pushing that machine and trying to race that machine a little bit around my home track. But with the new Outlander, it still had that, but not to the same degree at all. Like you could still push it comfortably. Like with the Gen 2 Outlander, I felt trying to like race the thing in the woods and dive into some off-camber rutted corners and stuff. It felt like, it felt like that tire was touching your chin.
Now, was your dad's Outlander 1000? Which model is it? Is it the XTP with the B-locks and the QS3 shocks, or?
Yes.
Okay, because I know the DPS models, which don't use the Fox QS3 shocks, those were using like, I don't know about the weight of the spring. I'm assuming it was a little softer weighted spring, but it was also a smaller gauge spring. So the base model shocks that were on the old DPS Gen 2s tended to go away, get soft in the first 1,000 miles. That was really the biggest wear point on that bike. But QS3s, I think, were a little probably not as bad for that. So, yeah, you probably just rode that thing harder than we were, and you were like really taking that suspension to the limit all the time. We could tell in Gen 2 versus Gen 2, like we could blow through the rear travel of either bike and find bottom, but it was happening easier on the Outlander for sure. A little heavier bike, a little softer suspension. I think
as it should be.
I think one of the biggest takeaways that I had from listening to Cody and watching was, I think what you're going to see is that the Outlander Gen 3 does a lot of stuff better for the average guy, as far as you point it down the trail and it's going to go there. It's because, it doesn't matter what the trail throws at you. The chassis is going to eat it up. It's going to suck it up, and you're going to go where you're wanting to go. Whereas the Renegade, it's stiffer. It's a little more compact. The whole rear suspension design is completely different because it was a trailing arm versus an A-arm. You could watch Cody going through stuff on it, and the Renegade was more like a jackrabbit, whereas I don't know, it was more, it would bounce a little bit more, which works for Cody because he's looking for something he can hit, jump over a set of rocks, land in a smooth spot, and get set up for the next spot. Whereas the average guy doesn't ride like that. He's just riding down the trail, maybe standing up, maybe thinks he's going fast and probably is, but he's not looking for like, how can I hop over this to hop over that? In just a different style of riding. I would say that the biggest takeaway, without giving it all away, is we kind of were worried doing this. I know I was, from running a publication perspective and not wanting to necessarily piss off a manufacturer, but at the same time, you got to be real. I thought we were going to come away from this where it was going to be like, okay, don't buy a Renegade this year. If you were going to go buy a 2025 Renegade, don't do it. Save your money. Wait till next year when Gen 3 comes to Renegade, because that's definitely what you're going to want. And it didn't, I don't think it was like that. I think it was kind of like, if you're a trail rider, now you got to be, and this requires you not having an ego and being honest with yourself. If you're a trail rider who wants to go on long rides, you want something fast, you want something comfortable, you want something competent, you want something confidence inspiring that won't wear you out, Outlander is better than it ever was. Whereas like now in the Renegade is like a little stiffer, a little crisper, a little dartier, but it takes more skill to get out of the Renegade what it's got. But it, in the configuration of the Gen 3 Outlander and the Gen 2 Renegade, the Renegade is still going to reward a high level, highly skilled, highly focused performance rider in ways that maybe the Outlander doesn't.
It can't without a lot of work. So, and I guess to touch on what you were saying about like wait until 25, there's a, like we talked about in our video, again, don't want to give away all the video, but there's a lot of things on the Outlander that you just can't have on a sport, on the Renegade, well, on the Gen 3 Renegade. There's a lot of things that they need to beefing up or change altogether to make it a proper sport machine.
Which is good, because I think it's cool that they have the opportunity to do that. You know, I think the platform looks promising. They just need to make some changes, and maybe we'll, this time when we're looking at a Gen 3 Renegade and a Gen 3 Outlander, when we get to that point, we might see two machines that are far more different in the way they feel than like the Gen 2 and the Gen 2 Outlander, Gen 2 Renegade were very similar up to the point of suspension performance. I think you might see some other differences between Gen 3 Outlander and then the Gen 3 Renegade when it shows up. I think you might see a bigger difference in overall performance and character between those two machines. Yeah.
So everybody, what we're going to do is we're going to look for that video on ATV On Demand with Cody and his team talking about the Gen 3 and the Gen 2. ATV On Demand is the leader in those videos, so make sure you're subscribed to ATV On Demand today and get all you can. Cody, I want to thank you so much for taking time away from your family. I know you have family that came into town for Thanksgiving. We appreciate that, and we always appreciate you being on the shows. And we hope that 2025 allows you to show your skill set in XC 4x4 Pro again.
Yeah, no, racing comes first, and they know it. No, I got good people around me, understand, and allow me to do what big part of why I can do what I can do. I got great people around me that will allow me to take the time to do these type of things. So no, I'll be down there hanging out here in a little bit. So no, thank you again for having me on the show. Always good time talking to you guys. Yeah, nothing better to talk about than racing for me. So no place I'd rather be.
Awesome. Everybody, please subscribe to ATV Talk on YouTube or on Instagram. Please share us with your friends and family as often as you possibly can. Remember, don't forget about your subscriptions to Dirt Wheels and ATV On Demand, UTV On Demand. We need the sport to grow as fast as we possibly can and get as large as we possibly can. Thank you again, everybody. Have an amazing Sunday, and we will catch up with you next week.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for having us. Thanks for being here, Joe. Always good seeing you as well, brother. And look forward to the next one.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, guys. Joe, again, thank you so much, brother.
Happy to be here. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Oh yeah. No, see.